Are rich people always happier than poor people? There is something almost mathematical about how the human mind approaches this question. We imagine happiness plotted on a graph where wealth is the x-axis and contentment the y-axis, with a clear upward slope connecting the two variables. Less money equals less happiness. The logic appears unassailable. But observe what happens when we look beyond the spreadsheet of assumptions to actual human experience. A billionaire sits in his penthouse, surrounded by every conceivable luxury, yet calls his therapist at 3 a.m. because anxiety about market fluctuations has stolen his sleep. Meanwhile, a street musician plays with genuine joy on a corner, earning enough for today's meal, present to the music flowing through him, with no thought of tomorrow's uncertainty. Which person experiences more happiness in that moment? This is not to romanticize poverty or dismiss the very real challenges that financial limitation creates. Lack of resources can indeed cause genuine suffering. The stress of unpaid bills, the anxiety of medical expenses, the limitation of opportunities. These are not trivial concerns. But the assumption that wealth automatically translates to happiness reveals something interesting about how consciousness relates to circumstance. Studies show that beyond meeting basic needs, food, shelter, healthcare, education, additional wealth provides diminishing returns on happiness. The jump from poverty to modest security creates significant improvement in well-being. But the jump from comfortable to wealthy, or from wealthy to extremely wealthy, produces much smaller increases in reported life satisfaction. This suggests that happiness operates according to different mathematics than bank balances. The wealthy individual often discovers that money solves certain problems while creating others. Financial security removes the stress of paying bills, but introduces the anxiety of managing investments. Wealth provides more choices, but also the burden of more complex decisions. Success brings recognition, but also the pressure to maintain that success. There is a particular form of suffering available only to those with significant wealth: the fear of losing it. The poor person cannot lose what they never had, but the wealthy person lives with the constant possibility of financial reversal. This creates its own category of worry, often more psychologically burdensome than the concerns of those with less. But perhaps more fascinating is what happens in consciousness itself as external circumstances change. A person who grows up poor and becomes wealthy often reports that their internal experience changes less dramatically than their external circumstances. They are still the same person, with the same patterns of thought, the same emotional tendencies, the same capacity for joy or worry. The money has changed their options, but not necessarily their fundamental relationship to experience. This points to something profound. Happiness may be more about the quality of consciousness than the quantity of possessions. Watch what happens when wealthy individuals lose their fortune through market crashes, business failures, or economic downturns. Some experience this as devastating, their entire sense of identity and security shattered. But others discover something unexpected, that their essential well-being was never actually dependent on their bank balance. They find they can be content with less because contentment was never really about having more. Similarly, observe people who have lived their entire lives with modest means, yet report deep satisfaction. They have not achieved happiness despite their limited resources. They have found it through a different pathway entirely. Their contentment comes not from accumulating enough, but from appreciating what is. The difference lies not in the bank account, but in the mind that relates to the bank account. There are wealthy people who practice gratitude, who remain connected to simple pleasures, who use their resources wisely while maintaining perspective about what those resources can and cannot provide. They have learned to be rich without being possessed by richness. Conversely, there are people of modest means who remain constantly dissatisfied, always comparing their circumstances to those who have more. Unable to find peace with their current situation, their unhappiness comes not from what they lack, but from their relationship to lacking. This suggests that both wealth and poverty can be experienced from very different states of consciousness. The truly interesting question may not be whether rich people are happier than poor people, but whether happiness depends on external circumstances at all. There is a quality of contentment that has nothing to do with net worth. It emerges when someone stops measuring their internal state against their external accumulation. It appears when gratitude becomes more natural than comparison, when presence becomes more satisfying than acquisition. This contentment can arise in a mansion or a modest apartment. It can emerge in a boardroom or on a park bench. It depends not on the setting, but on the quality of attention brought to whatever setting presents itself. Perhaps the most profound realization is this: the capacity for happiness exists independent of financial status. It is not distributed according to wealth. It is not earned through accumulation. It is not purchased through transactions. The rich person seeking happiness through more wealth and the poor person seeking happiness through initial wealth are both looking in the same direction, toward external circumstances for internal states. Both may be equally distant from what they seek. Can we appreciate abundance when it appears without clinging to it? Can we accept limitation when it arises without being diminished by it? Can we find contentment that fluctuates with no bank balance? In the space between envying the rich and pitying the poor, something more balanced emerges. A recognition that human happiness operates according to principles that have little to do with financial scorekeeping. What is this contentment that belongs to no economic class? This peace that is neither bought nor sold, this satisfaction that emerges not from having enough money, but from being enough.